What's up, y'all? Welcome back to the Blueprints Brocast. My name is Jay Cruz.
I'm Austin Tokar.
Man, I have been just in kind of like a Christmas funk, I would say. Like this
Got
time,
the flannels on right now.
well, yeah, got the flannels because
Cold weather.
It's cold weather, yeah. But it's like you're waiting for like Christmas time, but like the inertia or like the process of getting there seems like it's forever. So
Yeah.
I'm just kind of like, oh, like when's it gonna happen? Because
Wait, Christmas itself or the season?
the season, it feels like it hasn't like hit yet for me.
I think it's because you live in Texas.
Yeah, why do you say that?
Bro,
Why
it's like
Texas?
it's hot all the time here.
Oh, maybe that's
Hot
it.
all the time. People are still dressed in shorts. Like you'll get the cold days, but then you'll have an immediate hot one after.
Right.
I mean, Monterey was a little bit different, but at least you would still have that cold weather to match the season in Monterey.
Oh, that makes
We're
sense.
out there.
I guess because like
Plus, we just did Christmas 2 years ago in Reno. It's snowing and everything.
Oh, yeah.
Typical Christmas.
yeah, I guess
Tahoe
well,
Christmases.
yeah, the neighborhood that I live in, it has Christmas lights all through it. So like
Yeah.
they are all like Christmassy. It's like one of the only neighborhoods I've ever been in where like probably 80% of the people have lights or a crazy amount of lights.
Is this like it's not like a Candy Cane Lane kind of deal, but
No, it's
nice.
It's nice. It's not like Candy Cane Lane. If you guys ever been out to Monterey and you visited Candy Cane Lane, they go all out there.
Yeah.
But here, I think for the city that we live in, it is all out for our city. But like even with all that, and even with us putting the decorations around the house and out front, it's kind of like I'm waiting for it. I think it's because I think Thanksgiving for me, like we talked about just a couple weeks ago, it was just kind of fell flat because it wasn't a lot of like family.
Yeah.
So I think I'm anticipating like the entire family coming over and like.
But I think it's also as you get older, things start changing. Your perspective from things start changing. So as a kid, you have no idea. You're just kind of like, oh man, Christmas break, Christmas time, it's great, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's how it just hits more. And the older you get, the more I guess disassociated you get from that. Too.
Yeah, I think the other part of it is too like there's nothing that I'm like looking forward to in terms of like gifts because once you're grown,
When you could buy yourself stuff, it's kind of like,
you just buy yourself one. And there's nothing nobody can buy you anymore, you know.
But it's always a miss or something when
Yeah.
you get the gift. It's like, well, I could just use that $30 I got myself something. You know?
Yeah, I think that's why gift cards sometimes like it's just like you're just given to give a gift at that point when you're giving
Yeah.
gift cards and
I
whatnot.
think that's when it becomes more of a joke. It's like, yeah, these just be joke gifts or something you just hand out.
Yeah. So we were talking a little bit about the 80-20 rule, like something we've been like pondering.
Oh, you got to say the specific principle.
Well, it's called Parkinson's law. And I'm not super familiar with that specific like naming of it. Like that's not what I've heard it from, but I understand like the idea of the principle. I used to work for a satellite company, and my office was one of the best offices in the entire country. It was like 170 offices, and all of what my office did though, 20% of the people on the top produced all my numbers.
Yeah.
And then we were always trying to like motivate the bottom, 80% of those people. But then at the very bottom of that, there's another 10%. Not that it's like 80-20,
Yeah.
but it was like 80-70. Then there's bottom 10% that were just like, these people just need to go,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
But the whole principle is, well, read it. So just so that we have like an exact.
Yeah. Well, we have to look up the other one because this one's the Pareto principle.
Okay.
Right? So I don't know if they're exactly the same or they just relate like that, but very similar. Basically, the Pareto principle is that for many outcomes, roughly 80% of consequences come from 20% of the causes.
Okay. So that's the one we're talking about.
Yeah.
See, that exactly.
Yeah. We forgot the other one, maybe. Who knows?
Yeah. The other one's actually a little bit different.
It's similar, but it's different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not a meaning for meaning, but it has a general like idea.
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts on that? Like, because I mean, that's my experience with it. Like in the business world,
Yeah.
like it exists. I mean, you can go to any company and you have high performers that just outdo everybody else, and then other people that just show up and like kind of like, hey, I'm just here to make money. And
Bro, I mean, I relate on that level too. I mean, like if I look at it from our team perspective, like just because like Justin, he is the name of the team,
Mhm.
right? Like he produces the most, right? As far as like clientele, bringing in money, all of that, right? It's his team. he was there first, and he's bringing all the money, right? Some of us haven't caught up to that yet, so it can kind of seem that way. It's like what we're talking about. It's not those exact numbers. It's the same kind of concept, right? Mm-hmm. Not in your situation where it's like, oh, these people got to go kind of deal, but it's like you can find similar aspects in almost every single company you're about, right? Like you go to Macy's and you can see who's bringing money and who's kind of like they're just there.
Yeah,
that guy's just there.
Yeah, and one of the other thoughts was that 20% of all sales comes from the profitability part of a company.
Profitability.
Yes. Yeah. Comes from 20% of customers, and then like 80% of them are just kind of like, they kind of just contribute a little bit, but the faithful patrons that come back over and over and over again is like 20% of what your business is.
Well, yeah, you think of the high ticket clients you sell, right? They're bringing in the most money, and then you have the people that are kind of like very needy and like, they're paying like the itty bit amount. They're not bringing in that much money, right?
Yeah,
they're causing more trouble than they're worth.
That's true. I remember. So I have this guy that there's a small group that I mentor, and one of them was saying like, hey, I get a bunch of these like small sales, like they're like $6,000, $10,000 sales, and I get so frustrated because one of my coworkers, he gets like one sale a year, but it's like $300,000.
Yeah.
But then I'm over here getting like 50 sales a year, but they're only like 10,000, 20,000.
Yeah.
And he's like frustrated because like, man, like his entire year is done in one sale, and then he just sits back and just chills while I'm over here busting my butt every single day trying to get these sales. It's funny.
Yeah. There's nothing wrong with the small sales. It's just usually in those scenarios, those people who are paying such a little amount compared to the people who are doing the bigger, buying into the bigger process, they're usually more trouble than they're worth. The guy who is dropping dollars, kind of like, I got the money, I'm going to spend it. You're taking care of this for me, and I'm not going to bother you. You're just going to do the work for me, right? They're just leaving you to do your job, right? Other people, they're always very needy. It's not for everybody, but a good amount, right?
No. So this is the funny thing about this, because we want to relate this to fitness. Like that's just because that's what we're about. So that's what we are familiar with. And Austin looked this up earlier, and I thought that I would share this because this is almost the exact percentage of what this theory is talking about. So I'm not sure what year this is, but it says the latest data indicate that 39.6% of U.S. adults are obese. Another 31.6% are overweight, and another 7.7% are severely obese. And you can guess what that number adds up to. It's about 80% of America is obese. So 20% of the America is,
at least somewhat in shape in a standard BMI context.
Yeah. That's kind of insane. And the numbers fall, they just naturally fall.
Yeah.
And I don't know whether this theory only relates to Americans, because it just seems like it does, at least. I mean, this is where we live, so this is where we understand it.
Yeah.
Who knows what it looks like in another country?
No, I mean, just from what people talk about, things tend to be a little bit different when you get to those Asian countries and European countries. They walk more than this, man.
Yeah. And not just that, but I'm just saying, like, just work ethic in general.
Yeah.
A lot of those places, you don't work, you don't eat. It's just, that's what it comes down to.
Or it's just frowned upon that you're not working, right?
Yeah.
You go to, what was it? I think the Korea and Japan, I've always seen those videos where there's like the work culture is like, I don't want to say toxic, but it's very detrimental to your mental health. But they're just like, no. I was about to say the dishonor thing. I'm Asian, I can say that. Dishonor on your family.
Yeah. You dishonor your family. I always think of Mulan every time
that's great. That's a great line.
Yeah, it's true though.
Yeah.
There's a lot of like honor in Asian cultures. Like that's just a big part of it. I mean, even Pacific Islander too. So
yeah, the same. A little bit of the same thing. Kind of.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is crazy because the idea is that 20% of America basically they don't even have to do very much.
Yeah.
You don't even have to do much to get into that 20%. You just have to, some of them are, here's the thing about that 20% though. It's very eclectic. So there's some people that can eat whatever they want, like Stacia. I'm not saying that she's out of shape or whatever it is, but she can eat whatever she wants, and then she stays her size. Like but for the most part, she stays active though. She snowboards, she bikes, she walks.
She's active, and then how she eats, like she doesn't have continuous meals throughout the day.
Yeah.
She's like, I can have whatever I want because I'm spreading it out, and collectively, I'm just not overeating
Yeah.
at this time, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't know what, like I was telling Austin earlier, because I saw all my check-ins every single week I've been weighing exactly the same weight, but I've been eating more and more calories. So it just depends on, what your expenditure is. My expenditure has been going up at the same speed that my intake has been going. So like I'm not technically gaining weight, but I am definitely, body comp has been changing. What do you think that, why do you think that it just falls like that? Like why is America specifically in that 80-20 in terms of, I wouldn't use the word healthy and unhealthy. I would say obese versus standard BMI.
Yeah. I mean, it's just about what you're willing to do, right? Because, to get overweight is pretty easy, right? That's like, you're just not going to the gym. Probably you're probably not moving around. A lot of people are sedentary and they got a lot of sedentary jobs. Stay-at-home jobs are very sedentary. You just work from your computer. To get to that obese range, you got to work for that though. So we can look at this in the other direction, right?
Yeah.
In order to get to that, we'll say top 80% now, you got to put in a lot more effort to get to that. But and then the very obese, even more significantly, right? I don't know. Because like what we were talking about in the gym earlier, jobs now don't require a lot of physical labor as they used to. We never had to really think about fitness in excess of, what it is.
Yeah.
That would have just been part of the daily ritual.
I think that's the part of that the other version of the 80-20 rule. So you give up 80% of what you have that's good for 20% that looks like it's more appealing. Yeah. So like for people, when they created more like innovative things to make jobs easier, like the car and, just different, different inventions to make a job easier. Yeah. It removed the physical aspect of a job. So now a lot more people do, like what you said, sedentary jobs. They just sit around and they can do everything from a computer, or they do everything from a camera or whatever it is. Like even this job is, we're just sitting here. There's people that's
talking.
That's what they do. All they do is podcasts, and they just talk, and they don't actually go out and do work. They finish their podcast and they go out and eat, and they don't do anything after that. Technology and the way that people can make money, even like gamers, they can make money, and all they do is sit there all day. But there's some of them that make different choices. But the whole point is, we gave up. We try to gain comfort by creating these inventions to make things easier, but technically we just made things harder, because now you not only do you have to work 8 hours a day, but now you got to go do the gym, 1-2 hours, whatever a day, to compensate for the work that we would have done if we had a more hands-on job, like, farming, construction, different things like that,
it's just swinging in a different direction. You're giving up one thing for another, right? So whereas it would be harder to physically do something, now you can say it's become a little bit mentally harder, I guess, because most jobs are, not physical labor anymore. I mean, a lot of it. And then back to what you were talking about, working 8 hours a day. If we can relate that back to the principle, I mean, how many of those hours are you actually working compared to how many are you actually getting done? How many are you goofing off with?
Yeah. And so that one is the Parkinson's law.
Yeah.
That's the one talking about, like, hey, no matter what, how much time that you have, you're going to squeeze whatever it is that you're trying to get complete within that time. So like, if you could finish it within an hour, you're going to stretch it out to 8 hours. Yeah. Just because you can. Yeah. Rather than, or you're going to do it in that hour and then just goof off for.
Well, even then everyone's like, man, I had the hardest day at work. I worked 8 to 10 hours. And then you're like, yeah, well, how many of those are you? Gary Vee says this all the time. He's like, how many of those were you just spending goofing off on Facebook and Instagram, just looking at pictures, liking it, or watching YouTube videos? Like, remember, we were just talking about Elon when he was kicking people out of Twitter. Like, some of those guys had a job that only took 5 hours out of the work week, and they were getting paid for 40 hours. And he's like, nah, dude, you got to go. Yeah. You got to go. You're fired.
Yeah. And even just in our day, like even in the gym, sometimes you watch somebody go to the gym, they're there for 3 hours. They'll sit at one machine. They'll, be swiping through their phone for like their rest time is like 10 minutes. And then they'll go and do a bench press. And we were calculating this earlier. Like if you're just doing regular reps and not really counting tempo or anything like that, you could be under tension for only like 10, 12 seconds.
Yeah.
And that's it. And then if you're doing 4 sets with 10-minute Facebook, Instagram scrolls in between, you're there for 40 minutes and have only been under 40 seconds of tension. And when you think about that whole 40 minutes.
And like, there's nothing wrong with being on your phone. Like, you can be on there. Just make sure you're counting your rest time a little bit there. You know, be considerate if someone else wants to use the machine, right?
Well,
if you're chilling there.
Yeah, not even that. And then when people say like, oh, I got to spend all this time in the gym, but are you really like, oh yeah, I go to the gym 2-3 times or 4 days a week and I'm there for like 3 hours. And you hear somebody bragging about that.
Yeah.
But then it's like, okay, but like you don't look like you're putting in 4 hours of work.
No, that's what I'm saying. How many people actually say that? Like I'm in the gym all the time. I'm eating practically nothing. Well, what's usually going on when they're not making results? They're not even efficiently working out in the gym.
Yeah.
The most of the time, again, is spent on the phone. And then for as far as like eating practically nothing, they're not counting their calories. They're not counting the macros. They're not even tracking what they're eating. They're probably like, oh, I had 2 meals today. Yeah, 2 meals of 3,000 calories each, bro. That's why you're gaining weight. So it's just things like that. You just
Yeah. And it's funny because this is where I would advocate for, business analysts. People are always like, oh, what do they do? What are, they're the people that sit there in your business and they measure, and they're the calorie counter. They're the ones who measure the business and say like, who's being productive and where can we cut the fat? Like, hey, this whole department doesn't do anything. They don't add to our business. So let's, ask them. But you only do that when you understand what's coming from that portion of the business.
Yeah.
We were reading this book. It's called The 9 Principles Every Leader Must Do. And there's this guy that but took over this company. And one of the very first things, he didn't have to do anything. There's nothing that he had to do to make the company run. It was going to run on its own no matter what. Mm-hmm. And the first thing he does is he cuts 80% of the company out. He just sells it off. And after he sold it off, the company blew up. It exploded. And somebody interviewed him and just said, hey, like, why did you do that? Like the company was doing so well. Why did you do that? And he said, after I analyzed what was going on with the business, I realized that 80% of the business, it just was, it's like extra weight. Like it didn't do anything.
He's basically paying extra money he didn't need to pay.
Yeah. He's paying overhead to a part of the company that did nothing. And then the 20%, the part that produces everything, is the part that he kept. And that's the part that got better. So here's the question. Wait, were you going to say something?
No.
So here's the question, like with that in mind, what can we do like in our lives, maybe in the gym, maybe with work, with whatever it is? How do we get the most out of the 20% and maybe replace
cut the fat?
Yeah. How do we replace some of the 80% with the 20%? And now we have more free time to do whatever else it is. What are some ideas you got?
Well, I think this is also an everlasting principle, right? So if you go from that 20%, right, you're using that time more efficiently, you get rid of that 80% that you're kind of wasting the time. You're going to eventually replace that with another time period, and you'll see like, how can I be even more productive than that? So just remember, it's going to be an ongoing process no matter what. But there's only one way to go about it. It's just start tracking what you're doing. In whatever way you're doing it, you got to do it. Like I use a logbook in the gym specifically to track like times, weights, repetitions, all that sort of stuff. So I'm taking all the information down. Then I'm like, okay, well, I'm taking a little bit too long here. Can I cut that down to like maybe 3 minutes for a rest instead of 5? Am I able to do that while being able to hit a PR? That sort of thing, right? So it's just tracking where you are. And then adjusting from there. That's what, from my perspective.
It's funny because, even hearing this rule and thinking myself, I'm pretty efficient at everything I do. So Austin, when he built my routine, he gave me like some days I have 4 exercises, some days I have like 6, but it doesn't matter how many exercises there are. I finish in 2 hours, no matter what. Like no matter how many reps and whatever else, I finish in 2 hours. So somewhere in there, I can even say, I'm spending too much time doing XYZ. Albeit though, the days that take longer, that are shorter, are leg days. So I just need more rest. I mean, that's just the way
that's what I was gonna say. Is like
you
could be having longer rest periods on those days specifically. But then there's always the case like, oh, maybe I'm prolonging this because I'm usually in the gym from 8 to 10, right? And then you're like, well, it's not 10 yet, so I'm going to take a little bit longer rest period this time, right?
Yeah.
You could be doing stuff like that. But I would just say overall, those leg days, they do take longer.
Yeah, and that's part of intensity too, is shortening. Like you don't even have to do more weight or more reps. You just shorten your rest period and then boom, intensity and more progress. I personally don't like to waste time, and you could get into the weeds of like over analyzing everything that you do, because at some point you do need to relax, you do need time to like just chill. But where do we want to gain that time? Because a lot of people are like, I don't have time to there's things that they say that they can't prioritize. Well, that's where you
take from,
you gain it back.
Like, I mean, what does Alex from, what does he say? Like, I guess how he did it is like he would spend a half hour to an hour or something on a certain project in that freaking corner with just his computer, right? He's just locked in. There's no windows or anything. It's just a white space and just locked in on that. Nothing else, no notifications, none of that. And you just lock in there for an hour, come out of it, right? And you can see how productive he can be in that time and see if he can be more productive the next time in it. But if you do something like that, you're not going to be distracted at any point in there. It's just 1 hour of efficient work. You're locked in, no distractions, no windows to look out of, no notifications. You're in it. And if you come out of that, you have time to kind of goof off if you need to. And when you really look at it, you're not going to spend that much time goofing off after. You're like, I don't really need to. Usually you're doing it because you're trying to procrastinate, right?
Yeah.
That's where most of the time on social media comes from.
There's this really cool video. It's a TED Talk. I don't have time to explain the whole thing, but if any of you guys are interested, it's called The Procrastination Monster. If you're someone that procrastinates, you're going to relate to this video so much, but like it's to a T exactly how someone procrastinates. And like, I laugh the entire time because I'm like, dude, that's exactly what it looks like. But you have to watch it. It's a TED Talk. Maybe I'll link it below in the video, but like it's hilarious.
Those things are kind of funny, man. Because when you look at things like, let's just say you're upset over something and someone acts it out, you're like, man, that looks kind of stupid, huh? Same kind of thing.
Yeah, it's true when you see it. The funny part is when we were doing kind of research and like thinking about this idea or this theory or this law, whatever you want to call it, I was looking up or was reminded of like statistics in churches. So 20% of the congregation, maybe even like as little as 10% of the congregation, are the people that do all the volunteer work, like helping with children's ministry, with greeting, with all the things that happen in the church. It only 20% of the church does it. And then when I looked at tithing, like giving to the church monetarily, it's only 20%. Like I said, 10 to 25. So like somewhere in the middle is 20%. So it's crazy that even in within religious people or people that have beliefs, it's the same principle. So like there has to be something to it, to like maybe people learned when they were younger, just that.
Is that specifically in like a Christian denomination?
A Christian denomination specifically. It might be in others as well, but I don't think the same structure exists in all, churches or religions.
Different, yeah.
But I wonder if, because we were talking about before a little bit about like learning how to do things, like learning discipline. Well, maybe some people haven't learned how to be efficient with their time, and so or they're scared, like people are fearful to do things, so they just stay in that like the realm of like, let me just make do and just stay status quo, and I don't want to like step out because if I'm seen, then I'm looked at, kind of things like that. So I wonder like why does it fall like that? Like it's crazy that in so many areas you kind of have the same statistics. I mean, you would never think that like, oh, if I just look up the obesity rate, there's no way it could be the same thing.
Yeah.
It's 80-20.
Yeah. It would be at least somewhere around there, like 70-30, maybe even less, like 85-15, something like that. It's going to be around that number, but that's just a basic idea. You're like, oh crap, these are relatively the same for things across the board.
Yeah. And I wonder how many things that you can dip into to say like, oh, it's like that everywhere.
But this could also be like that angel number thing, right?
What's the angel number?
You never seen angel number? Basically, angel numbers are numbers that go according to, I don't know if this is specifically right, but like whatever angel has a specific, it's like horoscopes. It's kind of like that. It's kind of like that thing. But stuff about prosperity or whatever kind of matches whatever number. But when you're thinking of like, oh, this is my number, like 111 or a 222, stuff like that, you start seeing it everywhere because at that point you're starting to look for it. And I think that's where people get the benefit of it, I guess you can say, of just like, oh, my life's going to get better because you're constantly looking for it to be better because you're constantly looking for that number.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I watched this video the other day and this guy asked the guy across from him, he's like, hey, how many red cars did you see on the way in? Because they were on a podcast. And he was like, I have no idea. And then he's like, well, if you were looking, you might be able to tell me what the number was. You could count the number because you're looking for it. But if we're not, so he's like, it's just basically like, his premise was like, hey, if you're looking for opportunity, you'll find opportunity. You won't just live life and it's just going to be as is, because the drive for him into the office that day was like, that's just whatever, status quo. I'm just going to drive into the office. But if he's looking for something specific, then he can count that. Yep. But if we're looking for something specific, like, hey, how do I become better, or how do I get more productive, or how do I become more disciplined, whatever the thing is, if you're looking for it, like you're saying, angel number, then there's the possibility or the potential of you going down that road is higher when you're actually looking for the thing.
Yeah. If you're just thinking 80-20 the whole time, like, what am I doing during the day that I'm wasting time in, where I could be more productive in, and how can I be more efficient at that?
Yeah. It's an expectancy, if you expect to do bad, you're probably going to do bad. If you're, I'm going to fail. Yeah. Well, good chance you are, especially like on a deadlift. You're over there deadlift, like you're trying to do a PR, you're like, I'll probably fail this.
I'm probably gonna snap my back.
Yeah, and guess what?
Bro, it happens.
it happens. But if you're like, I can do this, the odds are you can pick it up, especially if you have somebody like cheering you on. That helps as well.
Yeah, that's why I don't like those horoscopes and angel number stuff, because if you get a bad one day, bad roll the dice, you're kind of like, oh, that's my day automatically. This decided for me.
Yeah,
interesting stuff with that.
Yeah, I never got into any of that stuff, but like I've known friends that are like,
I think it's just fun because there's always one friend, maybe two. They're like, oh, my horoscope said this, and then you're like, really? Well, what did it say yesterday? Because you were acting like a bum.
Yeah. Oh, right. The people that are like into the crystals and all that kind of stuff. It's like there's a Phoebe character in every friend group. Yeah. There's that one that's into horoscopes and crystals and whatever else and different things. So
yeah.
And talking about 80-20 rule and thinking about how to capitalize on it, because it exists so often. I think personally, like a step that I'm going to take is like what we just said, look for more opportunity and to like account for my time and like, what can I do better? And even like, so like I do all the things, like I'm part of 20% of church. I volunteer in like multiple places. So it is kind of true. It's like 3 different places. But I think for me, like I have a lot of time in the day where I need to spend more time, like just one-on-one with my kids. So for me, the 20% would be to spend more time with my kids, because I want to be in the 20% tile of fathers that have good relationships with their kids and develop them and make them better. So like that's how I feel like I'm going to apply it. Like just reading about this, learning about it. I think that's the best way I can apply it for my life. I'm not sure, for anybody else out there, but how do you feel like you can apply it?
As always, it's going to be going towards coaching. Like, how can I be a better coach? How can I, if we were going to say sign more clients, how can I do that? Provide more value for them. What do I suck at when it comes to posting and being on social media? And what should I spend less time doing if I suck at it? Right. So what can I spend more on things that are potentially going to provide more value?
Yeah.
So spend less time on things I suck at, trying to build those up, spend more time on things that I'm good at and reinforcing that.
Yeah. What's cool about yours is that you can actually like look at insights and stuff, and you can say, oh, well, hey, I have more interaction with this type of post rather than this. And so you can get immediate feedback. Like me, it's like, hey, I'm going to do what I'm going to do. 10, 20 years from now is when I get the feedback on.
Yeah. Like, oh, man.
Yeah. But I think there's like everything we've ever talked about, you can reevaluate. We've talked about relationships a lot. We talked about friendships. We talked about commitments. Yeah. I think that you can go back to anything and just say like, hey, what's the extra 80% effort that I'm putting into this that just falls flat? And how can I cut that out and just like concentrate on the 20% that will multiply my efforts, rather than like me just, spinning my wheels in other places that, don't gain any kind of ground.
Yeah. But thank you for watching another episode of the Blueprints Brocast. Yeah, got it right finally. Hope you're able to get something from this, and we'll see you next time.
Peace.